So this is something that I've been thinking about for a little bit here. I thought about it last night with the Browns quarterback situation. Obviously, you have Deshaun Watson, and there is the possibility that I saw that they could retain and bring back Joe Flacco. Now, then you get into the big question, should they do this? Should the Browns roll back Joe Flacco? And I don't think the answer to that is as complicated as people might think. Obviously, the Deshaun Watson contract is a hit. It's a big hit. You're paying him upwards of, I want to say it's like $60 million next year. So on one side, you're looking at it and you're like, well, you have to play Deshaun Watson. But at the same time, let's say you bring in Joe for, I don't know what he's going to ask for, somewhere in the 1 to 5 range. He'll take like a veteran's minimum kind of thing. Let's say you bring him in for that. Do you trot him out week 1 and start him? And the only reason that I would consider this, if I'm the Browns, is Stefanski's offense has never hummed quite the way it did with Joe Flacco at the quarterback. It just worked. Some things in the NFL, they just work. You look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, I can see that working. And I mean, you're really looking at it. And Stefanski, people forget, before this Coach of the year where they go to the playoffs and he starts like 5 different quarterbacks, he was on the hot seat going into this year. It wasn't that hot of a seat, but if he didn't make the playoffs, there would have been a lot of questions. And obviously those are all shut down now because of the year that he had. But from watching it, the Browns, even that year in 2020, the offense wasn't this good. And it was a very small stretch. It was a stretch of like 5 games. That offense looked electric. It was just as if everything fit together. You had him throwing to Njoku more. Amari Cooper. Njoku looked like a top 5 tight end with Joe Flacco. Now, Deshaun Watson utilizes Njoku too. But there was something about that offense with Joe Flacco. And I think, this is a thing that you could probably only do for a year, if you even get there. But let's say you start Joe Flacco. Let's just play it out here. Let's say you end up starting Joe Flacco. The worst thing you can do is he plays like they have a 1-2 record or an 0-3 record after 3 games. You cut him, you play Watson. That's all you gotta do. But to not try, why not? Like I think we're worried too much about the size of the contract or Watson's feelings being hurt and all that. What they should be worried about is what is the best way to win. That's the conversation that you need to have if you're Stefanski and these guys. If Joe Flacco is the best way to win, well, then you bring in Joe Flacco. It's not about making people happy. It's not about risking everything for a contract. And I'm one of the few guys that still likes Watson. I think Watson has played fine in the games that he's played in Cleveland. And I know, obviously, the off-the-field stuff, it's bad. It's very bad. But I like to look at them as NFL players. And as an NFL player, I mean, from what I've seen him in Cleveland, it's not that bad. It doesn't look that bad at all. That game that he had against Baltimore was an unbelievable game that nobody wants to talk about. He's not a bad quarterback. The situation, him being the Browns quarterback alone, is light years better than the situation they have in Pittsburgh. It's not very close. But, I mean, people hype it up and they say, who knows? There's probably people out there that think Kenny Pickett and Deshaun Watson are on the same level. They are not. And it's not not close at all. It isn't. But going away from that, Joe's only going to have about 1 year. Do you think you can go after it? Because you're going to have Watson. Watson's not going anywhere. Nobody else is taking on that contract in the NFL. If you sit him maybe you sit him this year. If Joe Flacco can get them to a Super Bowl, if they honestly feel that, bring him back and play him. It's not a terrible idea. Like I said, why not try at this point? If it backfires, if he plays bad, just cut him. It would be barely a hit. He's going to come in for a minimum deal. Anything more, you can't sign him. If he's asking for like $10 million, you can't sign him. But if he comes in on a minimum deal, that changes everything. Why not try it? If that's what they think. The Stefanski offense has never looked better than in those games with Joe Flacco. It just hasn't. And, you can talk about the playoff game and all this and all that. It got away from them. The game should have been closer than it was. Flacco's going to sling it. He's going to gunsling it. And he just happened to throw two bad interceptions that game that were pick sixes. It happens. But I don't think it's crazy to come in and play Joe Flacco this year. Or at least just start him for a little bit. Do we even know the state of Deshaun Watson's shoulder? That's another thing. What was going on with the shoulder? The report said that if he would have played more, there could have been permanent structural damage. So we don't even know how healthy the guy is when he's coming back. I thought he was finally getting into a groove when he injured his shoulder. Like that game, like I said, that game against Baltimore was an untalked and very untalked about, unbelievable Deshaun Watson performance. Obviously, it's not talked about because everybody in the media hates him. But he played pretty well in that game. The issue I'm going to have is it's tough. The AFC is so tough this year. And if you don't have a solid plan, you're going to get caught. And you're going to lose games to these teams. These teams are too good. You have too many teams out there. So if you want to go with this, if you think you can run with it, bring in Joe. Play him. If that's what they think they need to do, it's not that crazy. And he doesn't have much left. He's an older guy. It would probably be a one-hit wonder on the season. Don't be afraid if you're the Cleveland Browns to make that move. Like I keep saying, I don't think it's that crazy of an idea. And if you're looking at it too, Deshaun Watson, when he comes back, is he even going to be I was talking about the shoulder earlier? He's going to come in. We've seen him come into a season where he sat for a while and it was a little shaky to start. It takes time in the NFL. You can't just sit for extended periods of time and come back and just ace it. You can't. You need game reps to be able to get into a rhythm. So, like I said, I think they got a shot. I like the acquisition with Jerry Jeudy. They're going to lose some depth. It's just inevitable. You got to pay this Deshaun Watson contract. I like both quarterbacks. I will say the offense has never been better than, from what I've seen, the offense has never been better than when they had Joe Flacco. But you saw flashes with Deshaun Watson in the game against the Ravens to the point where I think he could be a pretty good quarterback for him. So I think you bring in Joe Flacco, you have one of the most heated quarterback stories going into next year. But just to stress enough, I'm open to the idea of Joe Flacco if they're just rolling him out week one. Like I said, the AFC is too tough. Take the risk. If it pays off, you could hoist up the trophy.